This podcast is part of the C-Suite Radio Network, turning the volume up on business.
Welcome to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer. Join us as Deb talks with her guests, experts in their fields, as they share real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I'm so excited today because we have a repeat guest. I love it when my guests come on again because it means they've got so much great content that we can't get it in an hour. But it also means that it's been a while. I haven't had this guest on since 2016, so was very happy to remedy this. And part of the reason is she has a new book out. So we'll be learning a little bit more about that. But please join me in welcoming Tara Alemany back to our program again. Welcome.
Thanks, Deb. It's so great to be here. I've been really looking forward to having another conversation with you. We had so much fun last time.
We did. And we definitely have to do this more than every 3 years. I mean, what the heck is that?
That'd be nice.
So cool. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you. So Tara Alemany defies a simple definition. She is a multi-award-winning author of 7 books. She is also a speaker, business consultant, and publisher, as well as a serial entrepreneur. Although she started many businesses during her career, her favorite by far is Emerald Lake Books, which she co-owns with her best friend, Mark Gerber. Using a unique goal-oriented approach to publishing, Tara combines her business and publishing knowledge to help her authors set and attain goals for their readers, their brands, and their books. In addition to publishing, consulting, writing, and speaking, Tara serves on the boards of directors for a Christian writers critique group, and in her spare time, when she has any, she is a winemaker, a military mom to 2 young adults, one of each, and is owned by a black cat. And as I was sharing, I'm owned by a gray cat. So again, Tara, welcome.
Thank you, Deb.
Well, I wanted to have you on to talk about your business because it really does help business people become published authors. But in particular, we want to talk about your book, which is new. It just came out earlier this year, and it's called Publish with Purpose, a goal-oriented framework for publishing success. And I, read it last night. I always love to read the books by my authors or by my guests. And what I liked about it was it's not only it's not a step-by-step how to write a book guide, because there are lots of those out there. There's all of those various things. This is more why we should write a book. Should we even write a book? And then how to go about writing it in a way that is for the readers, as opposed to, I think I should write a book. And so, tell us, let's go back. Tell us a little bit more about Emerald and how you got started with it.
Well, Emerald Lake Books, actually, I founded 5 years ago. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary earlier this month.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty excited about
Cool.
that. But it started because I had been a self-published author.
Mm-hmm.
I'd done 5 different books up to that point. And as a self-published author, I ran into different problems with each book that a mentor of mine refers to it as unconscious incompetence. Really, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
Publishing these books, I ran into problems that the publisher didn't forewarn me or the people I was working with didn't forewarn me about, and I didn't know enough to discover.
Mm-hmm.
And so after a while, I really didn't have another book that I felt inspired to write at that time. But I was in a mastermind group that actually was run by our mutual friend, Jeffrey Hazlett. And a number of my friends in the mastermind group were writing books for their business. And because my early career, I was a technical writer, they asked for my help in structuring and editing the book. And I realized after doing 7 or 8 of those for different people that I had nothing pointing back to me as a publisher. And that's not good for business.
Right,
So
right.
I thought, I had a company that was focused on speakers, that was helping with social media and website design. So I thought I would open up this little division that would be a side hustle type thing, helping speakers produce their books. And within a very, very short time, that became really the primary focus. The social media training that we used to do and the website design, we only do for some of the authors that we publish and not for anybody else because we have too many books that we're looking at.
Right.
But what ended up happening was, we found as we went along that initially it started out as just me, and I would subcontract some work
Mm-hmm.
to my best friend, Mark Gerber.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, the business was growing to the extent that it really took more than just me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I invited him to join me as a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So as of November 16th, 2016, he joined me as a partner.
Mm.
The challenge there was all of the processes were in my head.
Right.
So I had to start writing things down,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to start really formalizing what we were doing. And what that turned into really was a great discussion between him and I about why we did what we did,
Mm-hmm.
when we did it, and what the outcome was supposed to be.
Mm.
And so we started developing this process
Mm-hmm.
where we were working primarily with business authors.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than just taking their book and producing a book, we recognized the fact that they wanted that book to build a business.
Right.
And there were certain things that we knew that they could add to the book that would help
Mm-hmm.
them do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started doing this coaching program alongside the production. So while we had the book in-house working on it, I was working with the authors, coaching them on certain things. I'd give them homework assignments
Mm-hmm.
that would set them up so that we had the information we needed
Mm-hmm.
to help them create that business building book. And so in doing that, this whole coaching program developed and became something that was really beneficial for our authors.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what formed the genesis of Publish with Purpose,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things we kept finding in working with authors, I tell a story in the book at the beginning about the fact that in my younger days, I was a technical writer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was the liaison between software developers and end users.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes the software developers would create all this neat functionality.
Right.
Yeah,
This is fun. Let's add this.
this is fun. Let's do this. Without ever thinking about, what do the users really need?
Right.
And oftentimes a new release would come out and the users would go, what happened to this? I
Right.
can't do,
Where'd that button go?
I can't do what I need to anymore.
Mhm.
And so the result was there was this disconnect
Mhm.
that people were doing things that they thought were really great, but it
Mhm.
wasn't serving the needs of the people who ultimately wanted to use it.
Right.
Writers do the same thing.
Mhm.
We have a tendency to be really passionate about what our message is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sit down and we write what that message is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we shouldn't be writing what we're passionate about, but
Right.
we need to write about it in the context of why has the reader picked up the book? What are they
Right.
looking to get out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, when you can bridge that gap, you end up with a much more effective book at building your
Right.
business.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the stats that you talk about in your book is that for many people who publish a business book, they sell a whopping 250 copies.
It's not even business book,
and
it's any book.
right. And
Any
it's
personal
like,
book.
okay, well, probably half of those are your family and friends who buy it because they think they have to. They
Yes.
probably never read it, or they read
But they'll only buy the first one. They don't
Right.
buy the fifth one.
yeah, okay, well, I supported you once, but yeah, I'm not going to do it again. And then I'm guessing a lot of the other copies are copies that the author buys themselves to give out.
Mhm.
And a big part of that is because they are not marketing it correctly, which is a big portion. But then it is because they didn't write it with the reader in mind, and so of course the big thing of word of mouth isn't happening.
Mhm.
They're not getting the tons of reviews. They're not getting people saying, oh my gosh, you need to read this book, because people read the first chapter and they went, okay. I've got, bless my guests. I have a lot of authors where, I can tell that it was really something so important to them. Like you said, it's their passion.
Yeah.
But they didn't write it in a way that I can either use it or understand it. There's maybe too much technical jargon in there, or, missing pieces, right? Because when we're thinking of something in our brain, we might skip 5 of the steps to get there.
Yes.
So, that's what I love about your book, is it's walking people through that.
Or the story is so personal.
Mhm.
I actually had this issue and the advice given to me early on. One of my books is called The Best Is Yet to Come.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first wrote it, the book itself talks about the lessons I learned in overcoming the death of my fiance,
Mm-hmm.
who passed away in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I first started writing it in 2012 on the anniversary of having first met Frank,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to forget what had happened.
Right.
So I started chronicling our journey together. And over time, I started writing it with somebody specific in mind. I wanted to share it with my best friend so he understood what I'd been through.
Mhm.
And I started taking it into my writer's critique group. and everyone was like, this story is so great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, really should publish it, really should make a book out of it. But one of my friends was already was a published author, had a number of books out. And she took me aside privately and she said, your writing is fantastic. You know, once people start reading it, they want to read it, but you're only going to be able to market this book who already know and care about you, because nobody else is going to care about this
Right.
story.
There wasn't that hook in there.
Right. And so it really, that was hard to hear at the time, but the best advice that I was given, because then it allowed me to kind of look at the book and what I was writing and figure out, all right now, this book is all about me. How do I make it about the reader? And, you know, we do that sometimes when we're writing a sales training book or a coaching book or self-help book or whatever. We infuse it with our stories, which is great, but we have to remember to turn around and make it about the reader. In that particular book, I couldn't really change the story, the narrative well enough to do that. So what I ended up doing was inserting throughout various places in the book, at turning points, these pages called Digging Deeper. And each one was just a page where the reader, I asked the reader to reflect on a similar experience that they had had, the one that I just shared, or, you know, to think about how they might feel in a certain circumstance. So in that way, it allowed somebody who was also going through a grieving process to follow the same progression that I did, making it therefore about them, not just about me.
Right.
And so that's one of those things we have to do with our books, especially if we want to build a business or brand or get people talking about them.
Right.
Is, you know, really make sure that it's about the reader and what they're looking for, and making sure that it makes a difference in their lives, whether it's just a momentary retreat of, you know, I need some fluff so that I can you know, relax and go do what I do best later on, or that it helps me solve a problem, whatever that might be.
Right. You know, and of course, one of the first things that we have to really sit down and figure out is, should we be writing the book? You know, because everybody always says, ooh, you should write a book. You know, and a lot of that is usually if you have personal experiences, like you have said. You know, I've had people who have known my journey through my cancer diagnosis, and it has been a long and winding and, you know, one of those journeys that was, you know, certainly not easy. And people are always saying, when are you going to write your book? I have no desire to write it. I mean, you know, and part of that is because I think about it and it's like, why would I write it? You know, what would somebody get out of it? And, you know, and I can't, you know, is it inspirational? Yeah. But again, you know, if you have, but at the same, you know, and I think we all think that, you know, okay, if we, you know, we have the subject matter, but what is somebody going to get out of it? You know, and you mentioned that, you know, we have to think about the reader. So, you know, just because we think we should write a book, or just because we're told we should write a book, then we need to step back and think, okay, really, what is the benefit? You know, you mentioned that you work with speakers, and one of the things that, you know, we hear time and time again as a speaker is you have to have a book. And for many, that really is great. For many, that's the only way they get paid. You know, they're speaking in front of groups and things where there's not a speaker's fee. So they're there to sell the book. But and you're hoping, okay, well, I just talked about subject A. Here is my book on subject A. You should buy it. But it doesn't always tie together. I mean, you know, and so it really, that hard conversation is, should I really be writing that book?
It's definitely there. And for many speakers in particular, especially those that are just starting out, I recommend a book more from the standpoint of it helps them clarify their message.
Right.
A lot of people that are, you know, beginning speakers, they get up on stage and they're all over the place with what they have to share. And it's whatever happens to come into their head at the time. And so from one speaking engagement to the next one, there's no consistency, there's no conformity. And so it's hard for attendees to really know what it is that the speaker is trying to do as a business. And so writing a book really helps you create a structure for it. And even if you don't publish that book, having that structure is really important when you're going to become a speaker.
Right. So if you do decide, okay, this is a good idea, how is it good for your business or your brand to have that book?
So you brought up the fact and figure that we've got there about most first-time authors only sell about 200, 250 copies of their books. So the number one metric that most people think of when they think about writing a book is they think about book sales.
Right.
And the money isn't in the book sales. Really what you want to be doing is figuring out how are you going to use your book to build your business or brand.
Okay.
And there are dozens of different ways of doing that. From my standpoint, the two most effective ones are making sure that you're building your mailing list and making sure that you're getting visibility for it, the brand visibility. So with your mailing list, you can do things like having bonus materials that are related to the book. Maybe there's a video that you recorded that's related to the book that then you can send people to. But in order to access that, you request their email address.
Right.
In one of our books, we have a bunch of templates and worksheets that go along with the exercises that we recommend people do. And so you give your email address, we send you an entire workbook that includes all of those templates and worksheets. So it builds our mailing list. And the importance of that then is that it allows us to start building a long-term relationship with them.
Right.
Because the thing about writing a book is if I meet you today, you're not necessarily going to have a book ready for me to publish.
Right.
It may be 6 months, it may be a year, it may be 5 years from now. So maintaining that relationship and remaining relevant to them so that when they are ready for you, they're willing to work with you is important.
Right.
But there are other things like, speaking engagements, obviously. We don't recommend that our authors focus so much on becoming a best-selling author because that's lost a lot of credence.
Right. There's ways you can trick Amazon. Let's be honest.
Yes, Amazon is very easy to trick unless you make the mistake of releasing your book on happiness on the same day that the Dalai Lama did, which we did with one book. There was no way. We got to 2. We stayed at 2. We couldn't get any further. I was like, there's no way. But there are so many ways to game Amazon, though, that it's like most people, when they claim they're a best-selling author, they're claiming that they're an Amazon best-selling author.
Right. And they got all their friends to buy the book at midnight when nobody else was there. That's kind of how you do that. Because for that hour, you were the best-selling author.
Yes. And you go as the deepest, the lowest subcategory as you possibly can. So
right.
There's as little competition as possible. Yeah. So it's one thing to say that you're a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal or USA Today best-selling author, because those are based on book sales,
right.
multiple source points across an entire week. But that classification of being a best-selling author really doesn't get us anywhere anymore. So we focus on our authors becoming award-winning authors. You'll actually see on my book, I've got my gold medal for one of the winners, one of the competitions that that book was in. And when you can say you're an award-winning author, especially if the award competitions you're focusing on are juried awards, those are awards that are judged by librarians, bookstore retailers, professionals that can judge the quality of the book. And so when you're saying you're an award-winning author, that's a totally different thing. And as you're looking for, say, speaking engagements, at this point, practically everybody has a book. So just having a book isn't
right. Not going to cut it.
Being able to say that you're an award-winning author, well, now that suddenly sets you apart as a speaker. People look at that and they're like, oh, they must know what they're talking about.
Right.
They must have something interesting to say. And so they're much more likely to say yes to you than otherwise.
Right. One of the things that you mentioned in your book is when we're writing it, we can't really be selling.
Right.
I mean, and obviously there are ways to do it overtly, but that kind of comes back to that mailing list thing too, because, or even if you're not putting them on the mailing list, even if you're just sending them to your website to get more content, to get updated content, whatever it is, that's then where you can sell. And so I mean, you can do it to some degree in your book, but it can't be in your face.
Right.
And so, but when you send them to the website, then of course it's perfectly acceptable because that's what websites are for. And so then it's perfectly acceptable to have the, here's what I do, buy this, whatever it is.
Yep. Using my book as an example, one of the ways that we sold within the book, but we're very subtle about it, was the fact that we talk about a couple of different exercises that we do with our authors. And in the book, we outlined exactly how to do the exercise. And once you've done the exercise, what to do with it.
Right.
And then at the end said, but if you'd like our support in doing that, Here's how you can
Right.
hire us to do that.
Mhm.
And, you know, that was a sentence compared to the
Mhm.
pages of content that I'd given them beforehand.
Mhm.
And so it was something that, you know, it's funny. I have had one review who did comment on the fact that the book felt like an overt sales
Hmm.
uh, uh, presentation
Uh-huh.
for Emerald Lake Books.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, people really, they honor and accept the fact that we're
Right.
just teaching.
Mhm.
And that's our main point. For us, you know, when we write, we make sure that the reader is the real focus.
Mhm.
And so what is the reader trying to get out of this? That really helps us figure out what's in scope and what's out of
Right.
scope when we write.
Mhm.
And that reader is really important to us. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, there's an exercise that we do called the Dear Reader exercise.
Yes, we must talk about Dear Reader. Mhm.
So the Dear Reader exercise is one where we have the author write a letter to the reader.
Mhm.
And there's certain questions that they should answer in that
Mhm.
letter, but it's not a questionnaire.
Right.
You want to make sure that in writing that letter to the reader that you're acknowledging who the reader is and
Mhm.
what they're looking for,
Mhm.
what they're trying to solve. Then you can talk about, you know, why you're the one to help them do that,
Mhm.
what this book contains that
Mhm.
is separate or different from
Right.
other books they can look at. And finally, what your promise is
Mhm.
to the reader if they invest their time and money in
Mhm.
reading your book. And when we have the author write that Dear Reader letter, it's actually a very emotional
Mhm.
experience because it helps us get back in touch with why it is that we
Right.
do what we do.
Mhm.
You know, who are we trying to help?
Mhm.
And it creates that greater connection. When that letter's done, we give it to our editors as they're looking at the manuscript
Mm.
so that the
Did they
editor,
meet their goals?
right,
Mhm.
exactly. Did they actually, you know, come through on what
Mhm.
they've promised in the end? And
Mhm.
if they haven't, it's a great opportunity to be able to flesh out the book more,
Mhm.
make sure that the reader really is going to get what they want out of it.
Right. And this is not short. I mean, you say that it should be, 2 to 3 pages
Yeah.
because there are things in it that you really have to consider. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not just, you should buy the book because I'm going to teach you how to do this.
Right.
It's much more in depth, and so that's why that's there. And it's slightly different version if it's a fiction book, because you
Hmm.
do work with fiction authors.
Yes.
And I think, we talk about soft selling. One of the things about your book is people don't have to work with you at all. I mean,
Yep.
the book is enough.
Hmm.
And so, it's great if they do work with you, but, there's, it's not that it's part one and part two and you have to do part two.
Right.
So,
It's not a
for
cliffhanger.
people, yeah, they can get the book and, and go from there. But, when you review it, that's, as you said, you take that Dear Reader letter and use it as part of that review process. And then what I really liked about it, and, obviously you did this on purpose, but the way you did it was there were parts of Dear Reader that then fit right into your book,
Yes.
whether it's the intro, whether it's what's on the back cover, all those various things. And I've read that before. Where did I read that? And that really is part of the goal with the Dear Reader, is to have that, because that has helped you focus your thoughts.
Hmm. I think you find those gems that really are the connection
Mm-hmm.
points between you as the author and the reader as the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put that in your marketing material or you put that in your introduction,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly it's very easy for the reader to
Mm-hmm.
self-select in terms
Right.
of, is this for me? Do I feel this connection? Is
Mm-hmm.
this what I want? And if it is, and it's authentic and genuine,
Mm-hmm.
they're already predisposed to like your book from the very
Mm-hmm.
start and
Right.
to want to learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book itself is really just solidifying that relationship because you've taken the gem of what you had to share
Mm-hmm.
and put it, front and center.
Mm-hmm. Right. And another really important part of the Dear Reader is figuring out who your reader is.
Hmm.
And I love that you point out the fact that sometimes the reader is different than who buys it. And that's really going to be probably with fiction in most cases, because you might be writing, for example, children's books. Okay,
Hmm.
little Tommy Toddler doesn't go buy the book himself. Grammy buys it for him.
Hmm.
But that's then going to play into the marketing. How are you packaging it? All of those various things. But it's it, you know
I'm going to say that it's not just for fiction though.
this is
Okay.
mhm,
Because we've run into it
mhm,
recently where, not recently, but we ran into it unexpectedly
mhm,
with a book that we wrote that we thought was purely for entrepreneurs and business
mhm,
professionals. It's called The Future of Omnichannel Retail. And
mm,
it talks about how, uh, e-commerce is changing in the age of Amazon
Mm-hmm.
and what businesses can do to stay relevant
Mm-hmm.
and competitive. And so this author presents this two-access framework that he
Mm-hmm.
creates that talks about what consumer expectations are
Mm-hmm.
for the various types of goods for sale
Mm-hmm.
and how we as businesses can meet them in those places with
Mm-hmm.
those expectations, right?
Right.
So we thought, great, entrepreneurs, business people. What we
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize was that universities were going to jump on this.
Ah.
And so we have a lot of universities and
Mm-hmm.
university libraries, universities that are actually using it in their marketing programs
Mm-hmm.
now. And so that becomes another buyer that you have to
Mm-hmm.
think about. Who's the
Right.
head of the marketing department or
Mm-hmm.
whatever department is going to
Mm-hmm.
be uh, related to,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're writing a business book,
Right.
anything that promotes business,
Mm-hmm.
will it fit in a university
Mm-hmm.
setting? And if so, how are you going to market to that
Right.
buyer? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be different than your
Right.
reader buyer.
Mm-hmm. And it might mean that you need a different version of the book.
A different version sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
more often it's different marketing. You want to
Right.
have, marketing campaigns that are
Mm-hmm.
specific to each of your potential buyers so that
Mm-hmm.
you're using the language that resonates with them.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I love when you talk in your book about the fact that you might need to get down to a really small group of readers.
Hmm.
You mentioned, Instagram for photographers.
Yes.
Okay, that's really pretty small, or, really getting down. And of course, as a business owner, and let's be honest, this is a product. It's a
Hmm.
product just like any other
Right.
product that we've got. And we're thinking, oh, but we want everybody to buy it. And no, it's never, we never ever should do that. And I've talked about that a lot on this program that, if you ask someone who is your target audience and they say everyone,
Hmm.
no,
Yes.
every single success out there has a very specific target market. Starbucks knows who they're selling to. Walmart knows who they're selling to. All the big, the little companies, they know exactly who they're selling to. Now they might have a secondary market,
Hmm.
but they get that down. And so knowing who your reader is really is very important, because sometimes, especially in the business world, we get too broad because
Hmm.
we're thinking it's a business book.
Hmm.
Okay, figure out more the specifics. Like you mentioned, is this, for marketing people? Okay, then it's going to be written different than if it's for the sales department.
Right. But it also makes it really easy for the buyer to figure out, if I
Mm-hmm.
wrote a book about, how to take care of dogs,
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing, but a book about how to take care of beagles,
Mm-hmm.
which one are you more likely
Right.
to purchase?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
the content's going to be slightly different, but
Mm-hmm.
probably 70% of
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be the same as everything,
Mm-hmm.
every
Right.
other book about, how to take care of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I give the example in Publish with Purpose about Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning
Mm-hmm.
and how, he started out first with that, and that is the best seller of
Mm-hmm.
his suite of books there.
Mm-hmm.
But he has more specific ones as well, because there's the Miracle Morning for entrepreneurs. There's
Mm-hmm.
the Miracle Morning for millionaires,
Right.
all these different
Mm-hmm.
subsets that just allow you to extend the same
Mm-hmm.
message into other target audiences,
Right.
speak specifically to them,
Mm-hmm.
so that they're going to value what you have to say
Mm-hmm.
because it is directed specifically to them.
Right. Right. One of the biggest examples of that is probably the chicken soup
Sure.
series. I didn't
Sure.
even know how many they do anymore, because they did start out somewhat broad, but now they've gotten down. And it's funny. I always want to like compare some of them and say, okay, and in many cases, I'm guessing it is the same content. It's not totally brand new just for that. Chicken soup for the teenage girl. It's probably got a lot of stuff in there for the first time mom on, and things like that. But yeah, so it just like with any other product, we have to figure out who is our reader.
Right. And so when you niche that small,
Mm-hmm.
it then actually allows you to, once you've kind of secured yourself,
Mm-hmm.
established yourself in
Mm-hmm.
that niche, you can always broaden out into neighboring niches.
Mm-hmm.
One of the examples we give is an author that we published a book called Stress-Free Chicken Tractor Plans.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's a pretty small niche.
that's a very small niche, right? And most people, either they know what chicken tractors are,
Mm-hmm.
if they're going to be interested in this book, or they're curious as to what a
Right.
chicken tractor is.
Mm-hmm.
So they pick it up and they take a look
Mm-hmm.
and they put it back down.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially a chicken tractor is a mobile chicken coop.
Oh.
And so this stress-free chicken tractor plans
Mm-hmm.
is for people who want to raise pastured poultry in either their backyard or in a small business setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in establishing this particular niche, the first thing that it did was it put this author on Amazon on the same level as his idols, the industry experts, you know, and so suddenly, you know, he's sandwiched between two well-known individuals in this industry,
Right.
and it elevates his expertise
Mhm.
because suddenly he's on a par with them.
Right.
But establishing himself and securing that niche didn't mean that he stayed right there.
Right.
What he did is he thought about what additional content
Mhm.
will people who are raising chickens in their backyard need.
Mhm.
And so he has supplementary materials that
Mhm.
go with it. So you can get his 8-week video course on
Mhm.
raising baby chicks, you know, and how do you do that?
Mhm.
He's got a checklist on diseases to be aware of
Mm.
or signs to look for. He's got, you know, what to do with your
Mhm.
backyard broiler operation as
Mhm.
opposed to an egg layer operation. So there are all these ancillary materials that he's
Mhm.
built out based on this one particular topic of,
Right.
all right, you know you want chickens and you need something to house them in. Here's the
Mhm.
book.
Right.
And from here, now he can do
Mhm.
everything related to raising those chickens in the backyard.
Right.
And so we can do the same thing in our
Mhm.
businesses. You know, start first, you know, with what is the common denominator
Mhm.
among all of the different people that you do want to reach,
Mhm.
and establish that groundwork through a book.
Right.
But then when you're doing your marketing, be very specific in talking to a specific demographic
Mhm.
that you want to have a conversation with
Mhm.
about the book. And when you're established there, then you can move into another
Mhm.
demographic that can use that book as well.
Right. You know, and one of the other things that I thought of when you were talking about this was by having those ancillary products, whether it's, you know, a second book or, as you said, you know, videos, checklists, whatever. So you're sending them again to your website. I think one of the things that many authors think is I have to put everything in the book. I have to get it all in there. This allows you to have your framework and then build out from there.
Mhm.
And, you know, sure, you might need another book or you might need an updated version or things like that, but it gives you the starting point. And I love that because I think that's probably why so many authors just don't even start because they think, I can't put it all in there or it will change. I mean, you know, I'm in the social media world. And so one of the things is like, well, why would I even write a book by the time it's published? X platform has changed.
Mhm.
Okay, well, you know, maybe you do it more general. And then on my website, I have the LinkedIn version, I have the Facebook version, I have the whatever version, you know, that having these secondary products really is where you can do that.
Mhm. Well, the other thing too is, you know, in figuring out that scope, when you know who your reader is
Mm-hmm.
and you know what they're trying to accomplish, then what you want to think about, and you do this the same in framing a presentation to a new
Mm-hmm.
client as well as in, you know, putting together a speaking talk,
Mm-hmm.
is think about where they're currently at, where they want to be, and what are the 3 to 5 steps they need to take to get from where
Right.
they are to where they want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and make the book just about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not the only journey or the only
Mm-hmm.
transformation that that reader is going to want to go
Mm-hmm.
through, but that's the one that the book is about.
Mm-hmm.
And so in building that connection and helping them with that particular problem, they're more likely to want to work with you again
Right.
on tackling the next
Mm-hmm.
problem that's in that same
Mm-hmm.
arena. So, you know, don't put everything in there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make it, you know, take everything you absolutely know. I was watching a video of somebody recently who was working with an author coach, and the new client came up to her and said, I've written a book. It's 1,000 pages and I don't know what to do with it.
Edit.
It's like, yeah, you basically took everything you knew and you had no idea what belonged in there. So you wrote it all down, and that's,
Right.
that's great. But
Mm-hmm.
now to make it useful,
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out, you know, who is it for and what are they trying to accomplish?
Right.
And it's the same thing we do every day in our business. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things, one of the reasons why I like having a book for business is because it actually allows you to attract warm leads.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when
Right.
somebody's read your book and they've
Mm-hmm.
gotten to the end of it, they know who you are and what
Mm-hmm.
you do. They should have a sense of your personality, your
Mm-hmm.
sense of humor, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And you know, there's some books that I'm not a fan of cussing. You would never find me cussing in
Mm-hmm.
business. And you know, there's cusses all throughout, and it's like, all right, so I already know self-selecting that this particular person isn't for
That's
me.
just the way they are. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not
Mhm.
it's not I'm not judging them or
Mhm.
anything else. It's just
Right.
not a good fit.
Mhm.
And so by the time that you get to at the end of reading
Mhm.
a book that talks about your process, who
Mhm.
you are, what you do, how you help people,
Mhm.
they have a sense of that.
Right.
And they know whether they want to work with you or
Mhm.
not. So the next step is much easier than
Mhm.
dealing
Right.
with trying to attract new people.
Mhm. Well, and And I love that it, as a business book, especially, you should be guiding them to that next step,
Mhm.
and like with your book, they don't have to take it, but if they choose to, there are ways that they can work with you,
Mhm.
and we'll talk about those at the end of the program. But, that's where, as a consultant, I would write a book that then would say, okay, then, if you want me to work with you on your LinkedIn profile, here's what to do. You want to do it yourself? That's great. Here's this. But if you don't want to do it yourself, here's this.
Mhm.
And I think that's sometimes, when, like I said, I read a lot of books. Probably half the people I interview for this program are authors. That's why they want to be on the program. They want to pitch their book. That's perfectly fine. But many times I get to the end and there is no now what, or what is the next step. They
Mhm.
did the brain dump. They went, I told them all about this, and then they didn't. And I mean, it's basic marketing. We need a call to action.
Yes. And you need one call to action.
Right.
I think the mistake a lot of authors make is suddenly they end up, well, leave a review and join my mailing list and follow
Mhm.
me here on Facebook and on Twitter and on LinkedIn and all these different places. And I think those authors are thinking they're providing choices or
Right.
options,
Hmm.
but what they're doing is overwhelming. And when
Hmm.
there's too many choices,
Right. And I'll pick
people do
one.
nothing.
Yeah. Either none or one.
Yep.
And if I'm picking one, I'm going, that's the easiest one. I'll
Mhm.
follow them on Facebook.
Yep. Yep.
And,
So,
and again, you can have all that, but in one place. So you've directed them to your website
mhm.
where then they can click here, they can do this, they can do that.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about Dear Reader. Then there's also Dear Author. So tell us about the Dear Author letter.
So the Dear Author letter is kind of fun. It's when the book is pretty much all the way through editing, it's the next exercise that we take our authors through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another letter, but this one's different because what this one is you're going to imagine yourself 18 months in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You've done all the hard work of promoting and launching your book. It's received critical acclaim. You've gotten your awards that you're getting. All these neat things have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you look back on it and realize how hard that all was. Most authors don't really, they think the writing's the easy, the
Mm-hmm.
hard part. It's actually the easy part. It's the
Right.
marketing that's hard
Mm-hmm.
because it can be very discouraging,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're just getting started if
Mm-hmm.
you don't see immediate results. And so this letter is you 18 months in the future, writing a letter to yourself now,
Mm-hmm.
sharing all of the neat things that have been accomplished because of your book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I refer to it as a verbal vision board.
Okay.
A lot of people, I've never been one to do vision boards because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a visual person in that
Right.
way.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of writing a letter to myself really
Mm-hmm.
resonated.
Mm-hmm.
And so you write this letter,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the end of it. Because
Mm-hmm.
once you've written that letter, what you do is you go through and you highlight all of the outcomes
Mm-hmm.
of all of the things that you've said have happened in that time.
Mm-hmm.
And you make a list of those. And you look through them and you figure out which are the three that are the most important to you right
Mm-hmm.
now, which would have the biggest impact on your life, whether it's your business, your home, your family. And those become the three that you're actually going to now sit down and
Mm-hmm.
map out a plan how to get from where you are to
Mm-hmm.
where you want to go. And sometimes it's not, guaranteed you're going to get there. But with a plan, there's a Norman Vincent Peale saying about, shoot for the moon and you may land among the stars.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that with that goal in mind and that plan in place, now it gives you a framework of looking at every opportunity that comes your way over the next year as you're promoting your book and when it first comes out, and deciding what will get you closer to the goal
Mm-hmm.
and which opportunities are really distractions.
Right.
And so it allows you to remain more focused, and
Mm-hmm.
being more focused gets you closer to whatever that goal was.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's a really powerful exercise because the Dear Reader is really helping to make sure that the book delivers on a promise. The Dear Author helps you figure out how are you going to market it in a way that's
Mm-hmm.
going to achieve what you want for the goals for yourself.
Right. And they need to be realistic goals. Now they can be kind of the BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious goal, but it's not going to be, I'm going to sell 11 gazillion copies of my book in 6 months. Not going to happen. I mean, even the Dalai Lama didn't do that. And so, it needs to be realistic things, But I'm also thinking it also kind of does need to be a stretch. You shouldn't put in there, I'll sell 250 copies of my book because everybody sells 250 copies of my book.
Mm-hmm.
No, maybe it's 300, I mean, or maybe it's 2,500.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's realistic goals that are something that you can do.
Yes.
I mean, they can be a stretch,
Yeah, it's definitely a stretch. Actually, one of my favorite ones that we laugh about and
Mm-hmm.
joke about is one of our authors wrote that her book sold 1 million copies in the
Mm-hmm.
first 6 months.
Right.
She was a first-time author.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I would not discourage her from writing that,
Right. Mm-hmm.
okay, because that's part of the freedom to
Mm-hmm.
dream and choose what you want.
Mm-hmm.
We all knew that that wasn't realistic,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
that didn't mean that we couldn't plan for trying to make
Yes.
it happen. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, shoot for the moon, land
Mm-hmm.
among the stars.
Mm-hmm.
So, in figuring out, all right, what would be needed
Mm-hmm.
in order to sell a
Right.
million copies
Mm-hmm.
and pretend that, all right,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we can.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was really important in that exercise with her was the fact that she realized that she couldn't make the impact and reach as many people as she wanted to if she was the only one promoting the concepts.
Right. She just didn't have enough reach.
Right. And so what she needed to do, because this was a self-help book that was around facilitating certain coaching programs, is she realized that she personally didn't want to do all of the introductory level programs, that she really liked the more advanced one-on-one VIP training.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to get that message out as broadly as she wanted for the book, she was going to have to train facilitators who could use this program themselves to be able to make that reach. So in doing this Dear Author exercise, it actually helped her figure out not just a marketing plan, but actually a business plan.
Right.
Because that business plan wasn't really on her radar yet. She knew she was heading somewhere in that vague direction, but she didn't know what exactly it looked like. And so by going through this exercise, it really helped her map out, right, if I want this goal and if I've decided that this really is my goal, and yes, I probably won't make it, but I'm gonna shoot for it and get as close as I can. What do I need to do to do that? And by exploring that with me, we were able to really outline what we had. I think there were 12 steps that she needed to do in terms of she needed to teach a couple of workshops on her own so that she got the material down so that she could then record it, so that she could then train facilitators, all these different things that she needed to do. But that allowed her then to back out and leverage other people to be able to sell those books.
Well, and it might be in making contact with those people. Say you've written a book that is talking about, cooking for a family. And so that maybe some of the most important people you need to get in contact with are the mommy bloggers,
right?
And who have the millions of followers. And, and so as you said, that's part of that marketing, part of that business plan. How do we get in front of those people? It used to be, how do we get on Oprah's show? When she had her book of the month? Well, she doesn't do that anymore, but I remember I had an author one time. I was working with her. She had written this delightful book and she wanted to, that was her goal. And it was funny because it was there was nothing here. It was just, I want to be on Oprah. It wasn't, let's get on local media. It was, it was Oprah. And she self-published. So one of the questions that I had for her was, okay, what if we get you on Oprah and 50,000 people order your book in a 24-hour period? Can you fulfill that? No. And so, it wasn't that we were discouraging her. It was, again, she had to think it through. And so maybe it's, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to self-publish. Maybe it is that I'm going to go through Amazon that, that publishes on demand or whatever, and so it really was just a fine tuning. We weren't destroying her dream. It was just like, okay, let's come at it a little bit more rationally.
Yep. The logistics have to be put in place.
Right.
Because otherwise it's just a dream. A dream without a plan isn't a goal.
And for many people, the dream is that they have the book. And so it's, okay, well, what are we going to do to get you from, you've got all this stuff up in here to having a book? Yep.
So I'm going to segue off of that because one of the people, sometimes we hear from people who say, I'm dyslexic or I don't enjoy writing or
I'm not a good writer.
I'm not a good writer. but they want to have a book, and they're struggling with,
Right.
they see the value of having it for their business, but they haven't quite figured out how to do it. One of the stories that I like sharing about Publish with Purpose is the fact that it was 77 days from the day I started writing to the day I had the book in hand. And that
Wow.
was with a forward, that was with industry endorsers. It was all done very quickly. But a large amount of it was done because I know my material, which most people who are writing for their business do know their material. So
Right.
that's on the same playing field. The other, though, was that large portions of it I dictated. So I just used if you have a smartphone, you can use the dictation app that's there. I used Dragon Naturally Speaking on my computer. And by dictating large portions of it, it actually made it sound more conversational,
Right.
because I spoke it as if I was talking to somebody about it. And so I would create a framework in terms of what my outline was, and then get to a certain section and know that, all right, that section, I've got 3 main points I want to hit. And so then I would just turn on the dictation device and start talking about those 3 main points. And by the time I was done, I had more of my book written.
Right.
So, this was something that was done very rapidly. And then, of course, you send it off to an editor. An editor is going to take care of polishing it up and things like that. But the main thing is don't let something like a learning disability slow you down from wanting to write a book if you really see value in building your business with one, because there are ways to do it. Whether you work with an author coach, whether you narrate it, you can ghostwrite it. So there's lots of ways to do it.
And I think that's a very important point to hit, because that is, one of the things that I hear the most when I talk with somebody is they say, I'm not a good writer. I'm, all these various things. Now, granted, your computer can fix some of it, like your spelling errors and some of those, but, but I think more importantly, people need to realize it probably does take a team.
Yes.
I had somebody one time who asked me to review their book, and I got through maybe 10 pages and then just couldn't read it anymore because he had not used an editor and he did not write well. And so, not only were there, and I mean, this was a published book. This was not a manuscript that I was reading. This was the published book. And I know, and with spelling errors, with grammatical errors. Now it was a fiction book, but that, that really didn't make any difference. But, we need editors. We can't edit our own work because we know what it's supposed to say. And so we miss those things. So we need an editor, and we need an editor who's a good editor, not just, hey, will you read this book for me?
Or my
We
high
need somebody
school
who
English
knows
teacher,
what they're doing. And we need marketing people. I mean, even if we're a marketing person, we probably need to have somebody else help us do it. And so, whether you work, you figure this out on your own, or you work with somebody like Emerald Lake, I think that is the key that people need to remember is, it's probably going to take a team of at least a handful, if not more.
One of the things that we'll talk about sometimes is, publishing is publishing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what business model you follow in
Right.
terms of getting from manuscript to a book, but there are certain standards related to publishing.
Right.
And those those standards involve good cover design, good interior layout, good font choices, editing. All of these things should be professionally done.
Right.
And, in the business model sense of, how do you get published? You've got those who want to pursue traditional publishing contracts, and there are pros and cons to that. You've got people who self-publish, and there are pros and cons to that. And then this middle ground is where Emerald Lake Books is. We're something called a hybrid publisher. And a hybrid publisher, to me, is what I wish that I had back when I self-published. And the reason is because when you self-publish, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You're responsible for coordinating the team or doing it all yourself and knowing standards that you may not have been exposed to previously or may not have even thought about. We refer to the fact that most books that are well designed use something called invisible design. And what that means is invisible design are the things that when done well, you don't notice. And when they're not done well, they stand out like a sore thumb. Editing is part of that. A well-edited book, you don't sit there and go, oh wow, this book is really edited well. It's
but when it's not edited, you're like, ugh.
Yeah. And so these are things that, if you're going to self-publish, you need to understand what exactly those standards are so that you meet publishing industry standards.
Mhm.
You use somebody like Emerald Lake Books, where we're a hybrid publisher. Yes,
Mhm.
we're paid for our services, and there are folks out there who will say if you have to pay a publisher run because it's all a scam. I instead use the analogy of being a solopreneur. When we
Mhm.
first start business, we're chief cook and bottle washer,
Mhm.
we're
Right.
client fulfillment, we're sales and marketing and bookkeeping and everything else. And if you're going to grow, and if you're going to become a viable company,
Mhm.
something that lasts long term, you need people who
Mhm.
specialize in the things that
Right.
aren't your
You're going to have a
natural gift and
CPA,
talent.
you're going to have a business attorney, all of
Yes,
those various things.
exactly. And so the hybrid publisher is the
Mhm.
one that allows a self-publisher to do everything that needs to be
Mhm.
done in a professional manner without having to learn all of it themselves.
Right.
And so it's a commodity. It's a
Mhm.
service provider,
Mhm.
and something that should be looked at as such.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, there are vanity publishers out there who fall under that same hybrid
Mhm.
publishing category. So make sure that you research any
Mhm.
publisher you're going to use.
Right.
But there's a place for each of these business
Mhm.
models based on the author's specific
Mhm.
needs.
Right. To some degree, Amazon really has made it pretty simple. Um, but eh, it is almost too simple,
Mhm.
and if you
There's
are
no
doing
checks and
this,
balances.
oh yeah, if you're doing this for business, I
Mhm.
mean, again, it is a product that you're selling. Do you want, would you have your widget go out there with errors, with the things that are going to fall apart or not work?
Yep.
Some people would, they don't care. They just want to sell as many widgets as possible. But most people want to have a good product out there. And so that's where it's so important that your book, your product is very, very professional. And the vast majority of people, let's be honest, they can't do it. They don't have that skill, or simple things like they don't know how to use software to lay the book out right.
Mhm.
I get books where I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't, they'll be really strange page sizes. I'm like,
Yep.
oh, this is strange, or they'll do it as an 8.5 by 11.
Mhm.
Okay, that's
Yep.
fine. But if I'm not reading it on something where I can see an 8.5 by 11 and it won't resize, then, and so, yeah, it's, as you said, it's all the invisible things that we as the reader, as an author, typically don't even know exist.
Mhm. And a lot of the authors that we work with, one of the reasons they're hiring us is because their focus is on whatever it is that their business
Right.
delivers and sells.
Hmm.
And it's not that they're not capable of
Hmm.
learning all these things they
Hmm.
need to do or building their own team and,
Right.
to do it.
Hmm.
It's the fact that if they spend the time doing that, they're
Hmm.
not doing what they're
Hmm.
most suited to do.
Right.
And so it really is not good for anybody
Hmm.
because their clients are missing out on
Right.
what they could be
Hmm.
providing. And so having somebody like us to help
Hmm.
is for some individuals the right thing to do.
Hmm. Right. And as you said, we could probably learn it, but why?
Right.
One of the best guests that I had on one time is a tax attorney.
Hmm.
We probably all need it. We could probably figure it out if we spend enough time on Google,
Hmm.
but why do that? And why spend that time when we can hire somebody else to do it? And it is difficult, especially when you're a brand new business owner. You're trying to pinch pennies. You're having to pinch pennies. But, it probably you're also not writing a book right when you start out.
Right.
And so to me, it's just another investment in your business.
Definitely. And the way we set things up is we talked earlier about the book sales not
Hmm.
being the key metric.
Right.
What really should be the key metric is, looking at what your reader
Hmm.
wants to get out of it and what
Hmm.
you as an author hope to get out of it.
Right.
What do you need to have to
Hmm.
use the book to build your business?
Hmm.
Are you going to be able to establish your expertise with it? Are you
Hmm.
going to be able to increase your consulting fees
Hmm.
because that expertise
Right.
is established? Are you going to be able to increase your speaking fees? All
Hmm.
these different things that can go into it. And you
Hmm.
have to realize that the book is in some ways, some people refer to it as the glorified business card. It certainly does a lot more than a
Hmm.
glorified business card because it tells people a lot more about
Hmm.
you, but it works for you
Right.
24/7
Hmm.
and it works for you all the way around the
Hmm.
world.
Right.
And to
Again, if you know who you're selling to, maybe if you only sell 100 copies, but
Mhm.
you sold those 100 copies to the right 100 people,
We're going to
that's
turn around and
perfect.
pay you
Hmm.
10,000 for a project or
Right.
something. Yeah,
Hmm.
suddenly that book has been a great investment.
Hmm. Right.
So
Right.
definitely.
Well, oh my gosh, we have just a couple minutes left. And so I'm sure people are going, okay, I know I should write a book. I just don't know what to do. And so tell us what Emerald Lake can do for our budding authors out there.
So we've really built ourselves up as kind of a one-stop shop.
Okay.
One of the things that we wanted to make sure is if you were going to use us as your project team for putting together a book,
Mhm.
that we could do everything that you
Mhm.
needed. So we have ghostwriters, we have author coaches, we have editors, cover designers, everything to take you through publication. And then after publication, we also have publicists that we work with as well. So we're able to meet any author wherever they're at in their process and take them through publication and launch and release of their book. In addition, they also get that coaching, the hand-holding that we do. What's in our book, Published with Purpose, is only a small piece of the exercises that we do with our authors, but they're the ones that really shift the needle for most authors when they're writing.
Right. So is it a package that people buy, or can they do a la carte, or?
No, actually what we do is we don't do package deals, because what we found out was that we either had to price the packages so high that
Right. The people went, nah.
yeah, people weren't paying for what they were really getting,
Mhm.
or we were losing money by, putting something mid-level and some people were paying more and we were losing out on other end. So what we do is we have an application that people fill out. And when they fill out the application, it's going to tell us, where they are in the writing journey, what they're trying to accomplish, what formats they're hoping the book might be in. We can do, ebook, paperback, hardcover, audiobook, large print. We do all of those. And so, fill out the application. If you have a manuscript, we ask to see the manuscript as well, because then we assess the manuscript alongside with your application to figure out where you're at and what you're going to need to get through publication. And then we do a proposal that is just based on what your specific needs are. So you're not paying for more or less than you want or need. And we go from there.
Right. I love that. And you mentioned, for some of your authors, you do a website and, all sorts of things. And yeah, so you can review it and go, okay, well, this person already has a really good website. We'll just give them the content for it, or, whatever it is.
Yep. So we provide a lot of the image that, the image assets, so your 3D covers, all those different things. As part of what we provide our authors, we also give them book trailers so that they have a 1-minute video of their book that they can put on their website. So we do a lot of neat things.
I love it. And it is one of those things, as we said at the very start of the program. I think so many people think I should write a book. And that's as far as they ever get with it, because they're thinking, oh my God, I don't even know what the next step is. So that's where it's nice to talk to someone like you, because you can say, okay, here is the next step. And then here's that, and here's that, and here's that.
Yep. We guide you through the entire process, wherever you're at right now.
And I'm guessing that every once in a while you tell somebody, you really don't need a book.
Or this particular book isn't going to accomplish what you want.
Right. You don't have the right. Yeah. Your dear reader got very confused. And or maybe it is that it's a different version. You mentioned all the different formats. I mean, for some people, an ebook really is what they need. They don't need a published, printed, pretty book. Nobody's going to buy it except their mom. And their market is used to reading online. That's the other thing is, if you're going to do a published book, are people going to buy a printed book, or do they want it as just an e-version?
And a lot of times what we find is if you're doing just an ebook or if you're doing a print book and an ebook, having more formats provides more discoverability.
Right.
We consider it somewhat of a no-brainer to do a large print if you're doing a print version, simply because there are so few books available in large print. And it's not just visually impaired people that are buying large print. It's people who are learning English as a second language.
Some of us who have trifocals that get confused.
Yeah, it's baby boomers who just want it to be easier to read, but still like the print version and don't want to do it on a Kindle reader.
And that's just not making it bigger, folks. It's not the way that works.
Nope, there's a lot that goes into large print as well. So essentially what we're looking at is really just how do you create the book that is right for the reader that you want to reach, and how many formats do we want to make it in to make it as discoverable as possible.
Right. Well, how do they discover you? How do they find you and connect with you?
Well, they can connect with me by emailing me at Tara, T-A-R-A, at emeraldlakebooks.com, or they can visit the website at emeraldlakebooks.com. And there is in the menu bar an apply button if you want to learn more about what it would look like to work with us and how to find the application.
Perfect. I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts for the people who are enjoying our program today?
You know, I just, if you think that a book is something that you want to write, I highly recommend sitting down and starting, finding a local critique group who can kind of give you some feedback and criticism on what you're writing so that it can kind of give you a sense of what does good writing look like and how can I write the best that I possibly can. And, you know, really spend some time honing your craft because this book that you're going to write is going to be something that is part of your business and it reflects who you are. And so you want to make sure that it's in keeping with the brand that you want to create.
Right. And again, it can be fiction books too. You know, my mom has written my dad's story.
Yep.
And, you know, and now, you know, she ended up just kind of doing it herself and things like that. But yeah, I mean, there are so many things that we want to get out there that there are ways that we can do this.
Definitely.
Perfect.
We work with fiction authors as well. We work with fiction authors. Honestly, most of the time it's because they want to become professional authors. And so their business is being an author.
Right.
It's not about finding coaching clients. It's about finding readers and building but they're still building a mailing list. They're still figuring out what they're, you know, how they're getting people to connect with them and what they're looking for. So,
right. You know, because they're not all going to be James Patterson.
No,
You know?
no, they're not.
Well, Tara, this has been absolutely wonderful. And like I said, we have to do this more than every 3 years. And so until next time, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a delightful discussion with Tara Alemany. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer. Join us next time for more real-life stories and techniques to power up your business.
You've been listening to C-Suite Radio. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.